Hulk Hogan, real name Terry Bollea, is to wrestling as Wayne Gretzky is to hockey or Babe Ruth is to baseball. A figure known both inside and outside the wrestling world that made the sport he participated in must-see television. Many will argue that without Hulk Hogan in wrestling, the WWE would not be where it is today. Unfortunately, his near 50-year career and legacy has taken too many hits for people to ignore, and self-sabotage has led the Hulkster to being booed on the very platform he helped build. You would think Hulk Hogan had it all. The money, the fame, the fans, and a history of success. Yet what went on behind the curtains has been made public on a consistent level to the point that nobody can ignore it any longer. Today we'll be taking a look at 10 of the most outrageous lies Hulk Hogan has told and break down just how hilariously obvious they are, and just how much of an attention seeker Hulk Hogan is and has always been. At number 10, Hulk Hogan claims he never did steroids. Okay, seriously now, on to the list. Number 10. Hulk Hogan faced Brock Lesnar after his UFC run. Remember when Brock Lesnar came back from his UFC run in 2012? Sure, he only had 2 matches upon his return, but they were pretty big matches against the likes of John Cena and Triple H. Well, what if I told you that this is actually incorrect information, at least according to Hulk Hogan? That's because Hulk Hogan claims he was the first person to take on Brock Lesnar in 2012.
It's totally made up.
In reality, Hulk Hogan and Brock Lesnar did face each other, but it was back in 2002. And it was the first and last time these two would meet. On an episode of the Joe Rogan podcast, Hogan made the claim that he was the first person to face Lesnar upon his return to the WWE in 2012. I got him first when he came back from the UFC. I was kind of winding down, putting guys over and doing my thing, and Vince goes, "I want you to work with Brock." I went, "Okay." I knew his buddy, Brad Renegans, who was from Minnesota. He was the coach of the Olympic team several years back, and so when Brock was in high school, we had heard of him, we kept an eye on him. When he came back from UFC, they gave him to me first, and he was really intense, brother. While the sentiment is a nice one, the reality is that these two only faced each other once, a decade before that, and Hulk Hogan wasn't even in the WWE in 2012. That's right, not only did Hogan not face Lesnar in 2012, he was a part of a completely different company which, many people may remember it not turning out so great. Number 9. Hulk Hogan wrestled 400 days in a year.
It's a made-up tale.
No, you didn't hear that wrong. Hulk Hogan once claimed to have wrestled 400 days in a single year, accounting for the years he served double duty in both the WWF and New Japan Pro Wrestling. For this story to have legitimacy, 2 things need to be true. 1. Hulk Hogan would have had to wrestle all 365 days of the calendar year in North America, and then proceeded to wrestle an additional 35 days in Japan. Let's say this is true. Would this not mean that Hogan simply wrestled twice in the same day? Traveling to Japan and going forward a day doesn't reset your progress and erase the match history. You did wrestle the previous day, and he wrestled twice the next day. Furthermore, there's no record of Hogan ever wrestling a full 365-day year, which puts a damper on the story. Finally, we live in the age where the internet has everything cataloged, which includes Hulk Hogan's track record of wrestling matches dating all the way back to 1979. One quick glance at each of the years Hogan wrestled back in WWF and New Japan shows there were weeks of downtime between flights from North America to Japan, and the busier schedules only occur when Hogan remained in one place at a time. It's a bizarre lie to tell, but back in those days when fans didn't have a chance to fact check him, he could get away with them. Number 8. Hulk Hogan was the first person to recognize Kevin Owens as the guy. On December 11, 2014, Kevin Owens made his long-awaited debut in the WWE, performing on the NXT brand and defeating CJ Parker in convincing fashion. After turning on his longtime friend Sami Zayn to set up what would be one of the greatest feuds in NXT at the time, someone was watching behind the curtain and paying extra close attention to the Quebec-born wrestler. That person was Hulk Hogan. You see, Hulk Hogan had an eye for talent, and he knew just when the company had the next rising star on their hands. And he was ecstatic to let management know that Kevin Owens would be the next big star. In fact, Hogan claims to have been the first one to realize his star potential.
This one was invented by a writer.
On an episode of The Steve Austin Show, Hulk Hogan had this to say about the prize fighter himself. When I saw Kevin Owens in NXT, I watched 2 of his matches, and I watched him grind and chop meat. I went, there's a brother that's got heat. Everybody I talked to in WWE wasn't real high on him like I was. The look, a lot of things he didn't have going for him, they pointed out. I said, no, I'm telling you, you give this guy a chance to get over, he'll grind. He found that spot between the cadence to get himself over and shoot his angle. While it is true that Kevin Owens didn't have the quote-unquote look of a conventional wrestler, he sure had all the workings to make a star on the rise. Whether it was his excellent ground-rooted promos, his ability to switch up powerhouse moves with high flying spots, or just a genuine and real personality that fans can connect with. Everything was there. He was made a champion 2 months into his debut on NXT, and he didn't just win the match in regular fashion. He obliterated Sami Zayn to the point where the referee had to stop the match. If anyone was high on Kevin Owens, it was the man that brought him into the company in the first place and saw the true potential he brought. The reality is, the WWE didn't need Hulk Hogan's stamp of approval. It was already given by Triple H, who was very much aware of Kevin Owens' track record and ability to become one of WWE's most coveted superstars. This isn't to say that Hulk Hogan never heard anything negative about Kevin Owens from staff. But it's also not the only time Hulk Hogan has attempted to take credit for discovering something, as the red and yellow megastar has made other claims in the past, such as discovering The Undertaker and giving Bret Hart his infamous slogan of being the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Number 7. Elvis Presley was a huge Hulkamaniac. When the king of rock and roll was strutting his stuff and belting out his greatest hits on stage, Elvis Presley was in attendance at several wrestling events, cheering on the Hulkster and becoming one of Hulk Hogan's greatest Hulkamaniacs. Given the rock and wrestling era of the 80s and how many celebrities and musicians were an integral part of the first couple of WrestleMania events, it was a marvel to see Hulk Hogan ahead of the times, garnering the interest of one of the biggest musicians and rock icons of all time. If only that were true.
No way.
According to Hulk Hogan's autobiography, which is as reliable as the McDonald's ice cream machine in the middle of summer, Elvis Presley would make routine trips to Memphis Coliseum in order to watch his favorite wrestler chop down mountains. As astounding as the story may feel, it's also a complete fabrication. You see, the dates of history books just don't seem to line up with any part of Hulk Hogan's story. Hogan made his debut on August 9th, 1977, and for Elvis fans, this immediately sounds the alarms and raises all the red flags. You see, Elvis sadly passed away on August 16th, 1977, only a week after Hulk Hogan made his professional wrestling debut. To make matters worse, he actually didn't start wrestling in Memphis until 2 years later in 1979, which is 2 years post-mortem for Elvis Presley, making it impossible for him to throw on his blue suede shoes and make it to a show in Memphis. Maybe it was just a matter of mistaken identity and Hogan really meant to say Canadian figure skater Elvis Stoico, or perhaps Elvis Costello. I guess we'll never know, and if you bring it up to Hulk Hogan on social media, he'll just block you. Number 6. Hulk Hogan outdrank John Belushi after WrestleMania 2. As mentioned earlier, WrestleMania 2 had its fair share of celebrity appearances. Did you know that John Belushi was also there? And not only was he in attendance, but he and Hulk Hogan participated in an after-show bar meetup where Hulk Hogan outdrank the famous Blues Brother.
It's a total fabrication.
While Hulk Hogan is certainly sure of himself of this story, the dates once again don't line up. WrestleMania 2 took place in 1986, which is significant to keep in mind considering John Belushi passed away in 1982, a full 4 years before WrestleMania 2 even happened. Furthermore, it's unlikely that Belushi would have known of Hulk Hogan's popularity in 1982, as his rise in Hollywood took place in April 1982, thanks to his appearance in Rocky III. This makes it hard to believe John Belushi would have known Hulk Hogan's name, much less participate in a drinking session 4 years after he passed away. Perhaps this is another case of confusing names, as Jim Belushi was very much alive at the time. Jim and John are easy to confuse sometimes, though there is no record of any Belushi attending WrestleMania 2, so it's hard to give the Hulkster the benefit of the doubt here. Number 5. Hulk Hogan could have been a part of Metallica. Everyone remembers Hulk Hogan's musical career, right? A notable session musician with a passion for the guitar, you could see him shredding to the song Real American, uniting his love for both professional wrestling and music as one. His love for music extended outside of wrestling, where he once attempted to join Metallica, one of the greatest metal bands of all time. I used to be a session musician before I was a wrestler. I played bass guitar. I was big pals with Lars Ulrich, and he asked me if I wanted to play bass with Metallica in their early days, but it didn't work out. I heard that Metallica needed a bass player, and brother, I was writing letters, made a tape of myself playing, and sent it to their management company. Kept making calls trying to get through. I tried for 2 weeks and never heard a word back from them either. I was hoping for a call from them, but never got one. All the haters were like, "You never auditioned for Metallica." Of course I didn't, but I tried.
It never happened.
While the idea of Hulk Hogan taking over for Cliff Burton and playing bass for Metallica sounds like a fun idea on paper, this entire story appears to never have happened. In reference to them being big pals, Lars Ulrich, the drummer of Metallica, had this to say: "You know what? I'm blessed or cursed depending on how you look at it, with having more or less a photographic memory for pretty much anything that I've ever been a part of. That one, when that showed up 2 or 3 months ago, I was scratching my head over that one. Unless he went by, I don't know, Hulk Hogan, I don't know enough about him. I'm not a huge wrestling fan. Unless he went by, like, his Christian name or something, and I don't know if anybody knows what his Christian name was. Dave Smith or something? If there was a whole thing that we had with him under a different name, but I certainly have no recollection of doing anything with, quote, Hulk Hogan, end quote." That one, I was scratching my head on that one, too. And if that wasn't enough, regarding the 2 weeks of sending auditions and phone calls to the band, frontman James Hetfield said this, "Huh? Definitely not. I don't know Hogan's version of history. I don't remember him." I suppose in an alternate timeline, Hulk Hogan beat out Jason Newsted for the role as bass guitarist for Metallica, where he no doubt preached good morals and brought a new wave of younger fans who sang along to Creeping Death while eating their vitamins and saying their prayers, brother. Number 4. Hulk Hogan got front row tickets for a Make-A-Wish child to a WWE event. SummerSlam 1992 had a fantastic card, main evented by a spectacular bout between Bret Hart and the British Bulldog. But an even better story than that is the efforts Hulk Hogan made for a Make-A-Wish child. Hulk Hogan has worked for many charitable organizations during his tenure, including Make-A-Wish, so it wasn't out of the ordinary to hear that Hogan not only met with a young wrestling fan ahead of SummerSlam 1992, but he also provided the child front row tickets to the show.
It's an urban legend that never happened.
The story is nice on paper, but ultimately it never happened. Not only was Hulk Hogan not on the SummerSlam 1992 card, he wasn't even in England. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even part of the WWE at that point. Both he and Jimmy Hart were on their way out of the company in 1992, performing a few international dates with Yokozuna in August before sitting out the remainder of their contracts. It's very possible that Hulk Hogan did make a wish for a child and got him front row tickets to a show, but it certainly wasn't SummerSlam 1992. Number 3. Hulk Hogan didn't know that Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock would come out at WrestleMania 30. At WrestleMania 30, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock all shared a moment together in the ring, entertaining the New Orleans crowd with promo work and a beer bash celebration. After the show, Hogan retold the story of making his way out to the ring for WrestleMania 30 and being surprised that both Austin and The Rock came out as well, claiming he had no idea that this would happen.
No.
His story on the subject may be one of the worst cases of revisionist history, as the WWE was capturing everything going on behind the scenes for a documentary, which includes the three legends hanging out in Gorilla and going over their segment together. Hogan likely believed he was still living in the early 90s, when cameras weren't around backstage, and kayfabe was very much alive. But unfortunately, this was not the case for WrestleMania 30. I'm not quite sure why Hulk Hogan would lie about this story, as there really isn't anything to gain from it. The segment was well received, and all three superstars got giant ovations and were celebrated in Louisiana. It's almost as if Hulk Hogan wanted all the spotlight to himself. Number 2, the New York Yankees and Cincinnati Reds scouted Hulk Hogan.
Not this time. It never happened.
At number 2, we have the story of Hulk Hogan telling the Full Send podcast about the Cincinnati Reds and the New York Yankees scouting him while he was in the 10th and 11th grade, but a broken arm during a game forced him out of the sport for good. I pitched and played third base, and a guy stepped outside the box, and he hit the ball on the handle. It dribbled down the third baseline. The bases were loaded. We all came up on the infield, and as the ball dribbled down the third baseline, I picked it up and I threw it underhanded at first base, and I broke the cap off my elbow, just by throwing the ball off balance. Unfortunately for Hulk Hogan, there's a few holes that we can poke in this story. One of which is the fact that neither the Yankees nor the Reds have ever claimed to have scouted Hulk Hogan at any point, something you'd think they'd gloat about due to his popularity. And I'm sorry, I hate to be the baseball police here, but in what world is a third baseman picking up an infield line drive, throwing it to first base when the bases are loaded? In no world does any player of any age do this, when the simple play is to just lob it to home plate and get the out to stop the run. Hogan would notice if he actually played baseball, but it doesn't appear like that's the reality here. I think this one boils down to Hogan wanting to one-up the Macho Man, as Randy Savage was signed by the St. Louis Cardinals out of high school. I guess if someone can do something, Hulk Hogan can do it better, even if he didn't really do it. Normally, I don't care much for honorable mentions, but since these are dishonorable mentions, and Hulk Hogan has way too many lies to count, I figured we could do some rapid-fire ones. According to him, Hulk Hogan's black eye at WrestleMania 9 was due to a jet ski incident.
It's false.
Jim Cornette claims it was Macho Man Randy Savage who gave it to him. Hulk Hogan claims he was on a plane to Japan with Kerry Von Erich 3 days before he took his own life.
No way.
Kerry performed in Dallas 6 days earlier, and judging by the fact that he was facing possible arrest on several charges, it seems unlikely he'd be on a plane to Japan during this time. Hulk Hogan once told the story about how he was invited to UFC in 1993, due to his record of beating Pride fighters in 1977.
Pure fiction.
Pride only started in 1997. Hulk Hogan wanted to be heel in 1990, but Vince McMahon vetoed it.
Not this time.
Fun in theory, but Hogan's lust for the spotlight and wanting to be the number one hero makes this story unbelievable. Hulk Hogan remembers the Montreal Screwjob very well, when Shawn Michaels forced Bret Hart's shoulders down for a 3 count at WrestleMania 16 or 17.
It's false.
The Montreal Screwjob happened at Survivor Series, not WrestleMania 16 or 17, and Bret Hart was never pinned in the match. He was made to tap out, And also, WrestleMania 16 took place in 2000 when Bret Hart was in WCW. And you know who else was in WCW at that point? Hulk Hogan. Okay, let's get on to the final entry. Number 1. The Undertaker almost paralyzed Hulk Hogan at Survivor Series 1991. At Survivor Series 1991, The Undertaker defeated Hulk Hogan to become the WWF champion, marking his first reign with the title. In order to capture his first WWF championship, Undertaker had to throw everything at Hulk Hogan, including hitting him with his signature Tombstone Piledriver, a move that marked the end of the match. According to Hulk Hogan, the Tombstone Piledriver was just as dangerous as it was devastating, claiming that the move had almost paralyzed him and really hurt his neck.
You're wrong.
Hogan's head came nowhere near the ring mat, which is something Undertaker himself highlighted in an interview with ESPN. So we go to the finish, Flair comes down, slides the chair down, and I pick him up, and when I tell you that I had the brother secure, he was secure. I give him the tombstone, and as soon as my knees hit, I hear, "You got me, brother." I was 24, 25 years old, and I just crushed Hulk Hogan. That's what's going through my head. They gave me this opportunity. They gave me this chance to run with the ball, and I just hurt the golden goose. So I'm just devastated, mortified. Fortunately, some of the boys in the locker room were able to pull Taker aside and let him know that Hogan's head was nowhere near the mat. That's when Undertaker took matters into his own hand, pulling Hulk Hogan aside. And I got to San Antonio, and I was like, "Terry, I watched back. Your head never hit." He's like, "Well, brother, what it was, you had me so tight that when we came down, I had nowhere to move, and that's what jammed my neck, because I couldn't move at all." And at that point, I was like, "Okay, I know what you're all about," and that's all I needed. Whether or not this played a part in the decision to strip Undertaker of his first title reign 1 week in, we'll never know. But it did take him another 6 years before he'd get another crack at it. Thankfully, The Undertaker never needed a championship to be a legend in the industry, and any time away from a title run was spent building up some of the most compelling storylines in the Attitude Era. The Undertaker's record as a clean worker and someone that protected anyone he got into the ring with went unscathed, while Hogan's reputation has never looked more spotty. And that about wraps up this video for some of my favorite Hulk Hogan lies, though there's plenty more that were left out that could have easily made this list. It was my pleasure to spend time with you today, and I hope to see you back in the next one. If you liked this video, be sure to hit a thumbs up, and if you really liked it, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to click that bell to receive all notifications of future videos. As always, remember to be kind to one another, and stay safe.